First of all, I want to thank you all for having me today. And before I start, I would say that, you know, the reason that I'm in the Rotary Club is because George is in the Kiwanis Club. They wouldn't let him in the Rotary Club, so... But, no, in all seriousness, I want to tell a funny story before I start about George. George may not even know this story, but you all probably know that conductors have very big egos, most of them. Giancarlo Guerrero is kind of an exception, actually. He's a pretty down-to-earth guy. But most of them have pretty big, sensitive egos. And one night, after a concert that Leonard Slatkin conducted, Leonard was our interim music advisor. He was a very famous conductor around the world. We walked over to the Palm to eat dinner. And as we came out of the Palm, George and Lydia were getting in the car there with the valet parking. And George rolls down the window and yells, "Alan, my man," you know, or something like that. And anyway, we said hello. And I turned to Leonard, and he looked positively crushed that somebody recognized me and not him. Just great. I loved every second. So thank you for that, George. At any rate, it's no secret that the symphony is in the midst of a very challenging time, and what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about kind of 2 or 3 sentences about how we got where we are. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. A little bit about what we're actually doing at the moment to put the symphony on the right course. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have going on then coming up in the future, and I hope leave some time for questions, because I know you're going to have a lot of questions. First of all, I think you all know that the Schermerhorn Symphony Center opened in 2006, great fanfare. And, yes, okay. Great, oh, wow, okay. Hello, that's much better, okay. Why don't we do this, just to turn some off. Yeah, turn that one off, can you? Maybe this will be better. Okay, terrific. Okay, yeah.
The other one's working now.
Oh, is it? Okay. This one's kind of got a little feedback issue, I think.
Like the original, it's working now. Does this ever happen?
You know, if we had this at the Schermerhorn,
Thank you.
You okay now? No? Okay, is that better? Yeah. No, I still can't hear it in the back.
The other one's better. The other one's better.
Okay, is that better? How's that? Good? No? Okay, no, can you, I still see it in the back, but you need it louder. Can you make it louder?
Get a whistle. No.
Hello? Hello, hello, hello. How's test?
Use the other mic that's giving you feedback.
Better? Use the other mic?
Use the other mic, yes. I'll turn it down.
Okay.
Turn that one off.
If they're both not on, it shouldn't do that.
Okay. That seems much better. At any rate, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got where we are, just a couple of sentences. I'm not going to dwell on that. Talk about what we have done recently to put the symphony on a course for a sustainable future. And then talk about a lot of the really great things that we have coming up, and the steps we're taking to move forward. And I was saying, as many of you know, the Symphony Center opened in 2006 to great fanfare. It is, in fact, considered by the artists in the classical world who play there one of the greatest halls in the world. Not what I hear very often from artists like Yo-Yo Ma, who has played there, that he plays all over the world. He says, you know, if this is not the best concert hall in the world, he doesn't say in the country, the world, it's got to be in the top 3 or 4. And that's saying a lot for a new building that doesn't have a long track record. So we're very lucky here to have the Schermerhorn Symphony Center. I think that you all know, certainly by now, that one of the ways that we were able to build the building is that in addition to the campaign we did, we had to use some tax-exempt bond financing. Most of the pledges we received in the campaign were 10-year pledges, so you can't wait 10 years to build a building, or the construction escalation will kill you. And a couple of things then happened. You know, when we got to 2008 and the downturn hit, we saw a precipitous drop in the value of our investments that were supporting the debt we had on the building. And at the very same time, an increase in the cost of credit because the credit markets were frozen. We addressed very quickly by making some adjustments to the scope of the operation. And as we were getting all of that settled, we had the flood. And I know it's been reported that, you know, we of course we had FEMA help, we had insurance help. The cost of the rebuilding was $40 million, and all but $4 million of that were covered by those two sources. But what you may not realize is that the market was still depressed, and we had to finance the reconstruction of the hall before collecting the FEMA proceeds. So we pulled additional funds out of the investments while it was depressed, deployed those to fix the building, and while we were waiting for FEMA, which by the way still has not paid the final nearly $5 million back to us, the market recovered, and so it essentially cost us every bit of that money because the market nearly doubled in that time. So those of you that have a lot of investments will understand that. And then at the same time, we had opened the building and had something of a relatively manageable operating loss because costs were higher than we anticipated. That's not unusual when a new building opens. I imagine they'll experience that right behind this facility at the convention center. And as we made adjustments for that, and we were beginning to understand what we needed to do, that's when the downturn hit. So when the downturn hit and then the flood, both of those things also had a tremendous impact on our revenues. In fact, when the flood happened on May 1st of 2010, our season ticket sales were underway, had only been underway for a couple of months, and they absolutely came to a screeching halt. And we saw a big decline, which we have not yet fully recovered from. So all of those things, and I hate to use this phrase, conspired in sort of the perfect storm to create a situation where the debt was unsustainable and where we were going to have to make some serious changes to the operation to move forward. So all that to say that you all know that we recently worked out a settlement with the lending group. There were multiple components to that, but what I will say to all of you, and I think this is really critical, the banks are our friends. Without the banks and their leap of faith in financing the construction of Schermerhorn Symphony Center, it simply wouldn't be there. And they were incredible in working with us in spite of the challenges that it sounded like, and it was a challenge for all of them. They worked with us to achieve a settlement that was, I would describe it as least bad for everybody involved. I don't think you could say it the other way. But be all that as it may, there are no outstanding obligations to commercial lenders now on the Schermerhorn Symphony Center, and the only existing debt is a small note that is held by an entity controlled by Martha Ingram, and the terms of that note were renegotiated favorable to the symphony. So we are able to move forward now, but we have far fewer assets than we had, and we're making adjustments. So last March, and this follows on a string of similar adjustments, Giancarlo Guerrero, our music director, and I cut our own salaries 15% and eliminated our retirement contribution, so the employer-sponsored retirement contribution. So effectively, we took 21% pay cuts, both of us. We asked the staff, who are the more highly compensated staff, to take an 11% cut, and that they also gave up their retirement benefits, as did the entire rest of the staff. But we didn't have that affect the lowest paid people on our staff. They were not affected except for the retirement. We then reduced the size of the staff yet further, and the number that will, I think, amaze you is that from the day we opened in 2006, when we had a plan of how to staff the building, we have cut 47 full-time administrative staff positions to going into next year across that period of time, 23 of them in the last year. All of these things are designed to really streamline the operation. Everybody's doing more with less, but our core value system in this whole process has been about focusing on the reason we are here, which is to play great music for Nashville, to provide extensive and important education programs to the public school system and to the children of our community, and to serve this community in the best possible way, both as the orchestra and in terms of the facility. So one of the things recently reported, for example, was that we eliminated our in-house food and beverage service. That was not so much a reflection of whether or not that was losing a great deal of money. It really wasn't. It was kind of break even. But it was an attempt to pull the operation down to our core business, which is music, and to focus on that. And so we'll have outside caterers providing food service in the Skirmerhorn. And then as we move forward, our real focus has been on our core mission and on revenue. And we know that it will take a combination of those things. So, as a part of this overall effort, we've begun adding presentation events to our schedule. I think, Ken just mentioned Bill Cosby. We've done a number of those kinds of things, B.B. King, Lyle Lovett, Gordon Lightfoot, and we're getting a lot better at that. And we're doing it with the help of Ashley Capps, AC Entertainment. Ashley is the founder of the Bonnaroo Music Festival. And you may not know this, but he also runs the Tennessee Theater in Knoxville, and under a contract arrangement, and so he books the talent in there. And he does a number of concert promotion activities around the country, so he has buying power, and he's been able to help us in a great deal. This coming season, in that category, we have events like Huey Lewis in the News. Don Williams is coming to the Skirmerhorn. Hal Holbrook doing his Mark Twain show, Mark Twain Tonight. Foreigner, and again, a number of events that I think will be of interest to a wide audience in Nashville. Our season ticket sales for 2013 and 14 are actually on pace to meet or exceed last year's figures. We're very pleased about that. And I think that's been bolstered in part by the strong lineup we have on our pop series. One of the things about doing the presentation work that we've done to increase revenue is that we've learned a lot of things about what we've been doing in some of our other series. And one of those was that we took the lessons learned in the presenting department and applied those to the pop series. Made the pop series more competitive with those presentations. We saw some migration of subscribers away from the pops to some of those single ticket presentations. And we've been able to recapture some of that, booking artists like Chicago and Kenny Loggins and Roberta Flack, and really focusing that series much more clearly on the talent involved. We also have seen an uptick in our in recent years, especially in our flex packages. We have concerts packages that we call Compose Your Own, and they consist of 3, 4, 5 tickets that allow the buyer to then pick and choose the concerts they want to attend. And we have seen that particular type of package in the last 3 or 4 years actually skyrocket in terms of its growth by comparison with our other series, which have been down from the downturn in the flood and then flat since. So we're becoming much more creative about how we package our concert offerings and trying to be responsive to the way people consume concert product today. We made some changes this year that are already proving to be very wise choices. We eliminated 7 of our Thursday night classical concerts. We were doing 14 concerts, we still are, in triples. We had Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights each weekend. Thursday night was the new night for us. We didn't have Thursday night at TPAC, and so it was our least well attended and subscribed. So by cutting it to 7, we had very few people buying the 14 concert package on Thursdays, but a lot buying the 7, and it pushed them all into one night. So we're going to have full houses on Thursday nights. And then rather than reduce our commitment to classical music, we are actually starting a new series, which we think will take a little time, but it will likely become one of our most important series, and that is a Coffee and Classics series. And on Friday mornings, on some of those other weekends where we eliminated the Thursday night, we're going to do an abbreviated version of the evening classical concert, generally without the guest artist, although we'll have the artist for one of them, but we'll do the symphony or the big work on the program. And it will be a little more informal. The ticket buyers, the tickets are much less expensive, but they include free coffee and pastries, and they're really going to be marketed to the audience of those classical music lovers who find that they just simply have gotten to a place where they can't go out at night anymore. And in most markets, that has become a very important series for the orchestra. It's something we've never done, but we've made a commitment to really stick with it long enough to make a success out of it. And we think it will serve an important segment of our community in a very meaningful way. We also, in looking to next year, have done a lot more with our rental client events. We've been a destination since we opened for weddings, for corporate meetings, for all kinds of events. Even the Hart Gala has been at the Schermerhorn, Eve of Janus, and a number of those kinds of events. Those are important events for us because while we don't make a lot of money on them, they do help defray the overhead of the building. And as we move forward without the in-house food and beverage, we have outside catering contracts that will allow the caterers to service the clients, will, we think, increase rental demand because the caterers will all be out there saying, you know, I can cater in the Schermerhorn, so if you rent it, I can take care of you there. It provides the rental clients with more flexibility in terms of cost structure. Our catering operation was, by the way, geared for a very high-end kind of event. So we'd staffed up for the highest-end kind of event, and what that meant was we could do, you know, sort of, when I say lower-end, you know, less elaborate meals, but it was still at a high cost. So this will allow some options for rental clients, and we think it will increase our revenue and, in fact, make it an even more meaningful place for the community. We're going to continue, and this was a real debate that went on as we went through the process of restructuring our operations to move forward in a sustainable way. We went through a very vigorous debate about the community service programs, whether they're education programs or free concerts in the parks and those kinds of things that we know that don't generate direct revenue, but they're meaningful to the community. And I'm happy to report that we found a way to keep our commitment to those things in this restructuring. So we are not going to give up our commitment to that as we move forward. It will change a little bit in terms of scheduling, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about it now. The last piece of our restructuring that is yet to be completed is that we are in negotiations right now for a new contract with our musicians. And while we're doing that under a press blackout, and I can't say a lot about it, I will tell you that we are also hoping to achieve a commitment on the part of the union, and we think we will, to be part of the team here as we move forward. And unfortunately, some of our scheduling that we've been able to do in the past may change a little bit as an outcome of that. I don't really know yet how that will turn out, but at any rate, we have maintained our commitment. But as we move forward, we've cut the institution's infrastructure to the bone, and maybe even into the bone a little bit. You expect me to say that, but I will tell you that our outside consultants that have been helping us with this from Craft CPAs will tell you the same thing. They've reached the very same conclusion. In order to move forward on a sustainable basis, we're going to have to do three things. We're going to have to address the public perception issue that I think was created by the speculation in the press around our bank negotiations. That speculation was natural. We couldn't talk about where we were in great detail. As we move forward, we've got to address that issue, and we know that. We've got to maintain these expense reductions, and really a word about that. There's been a little bit of speculation about our expense structure being, they sort of made it sound like we were just spending a lot of money. The truth is that our operating budget, if you strip away all of the mark-to-market on securities and all this other stuff that had to happen, our basic operating budget has remained flat and even gone down since the day we opened the building. Now, you can't say that about any organization that you can think of, I bet, that across a 7-year period is not spending more money than it was 7 years ago. I mean, that's remarkable. And a lot of that's in that continual tightening of the staff structure. The other thing that's been talked about is the size of our staff. The symphony before the hall opened had about 35 staff members, but we played at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, which has 70 staff members. It takes a lot of people to run a building, and now we're both an orchestra and a building. And so we're going to actually be doing all of that with a staff about the size of TPACs now, and they don't have an orchestra to run. So at any rate, like I said, we've maintained our commitments to the community, but we've as we go forward, going to have to keep a tight rein on the expenses now. And then the final piece is that we're going to have to raise more money than we've ever raised before for our annual fund, and we're going to have to hit all of our ticket sales projections. So it's a big mountain to climb. We have an extraordinarily talented group of people working at the Symphony, and we have a fantastic board of directors, but it is going to take the community's engagement with the institution to really see that through. And it's the basic question of, if the community really wants us to continue to provide the level of service that we've been able to provide, then it's going to take the community's help to make that happen. And I will tell you that the commitment we have to education and to community service is no small thing. We serve nearly 100,000 young people a year through our various education programs, community engagement programs, and that's all done for free, no cost to the students or the schools. We're coordinating what we do with the mayor's Music Makes Us program. We're working very closely with Laurie Schell and the Metro schools, and we also serve private schools and have really worked very hard to not just deliver what we think those schools need and want, but to listen to what they have to say, to listen to what the needs of the teachers and the kids are, and really try to deliver those services. So we're I think very lucky to have a really world-class orchestra here in Nashville. We're not alone, by the way. There are orchestras all over the country struggling with very serious challenges, and I believe that we will come through this better than most of those, because Nashville is a great city. It's my chosen home. I'm a Texan by birth, but I can tell you I'm a Nashvilleian by choice, and that's saying a lot for it, because Texans are pretty proud of their roots. But I love this community, and it's where I will, I'm sure, spend the rest of my life, God willing. And at any rate, as we go forward, we have an incredible lineup of concerts for next year. There are brochures on your tables, and I would encourage you, if you would, to take that brochure home and look at it. If you haven't bought tickets, whether you decide you're going to come to just a few events or buy a subscription, anything you do like that would be helpful. We think actually the best way the community can help is to come and be present. We still do, believe it or not, even on our classical series, sell out a lot of concerts. And if you've ever been at one of those classical concerts that's sold out and the orchestra is performing at a high level, the energy in the room is palpable. It really is. I mean, I'm always thrilled at the end of a concert when the orchestra's on stage taking its bows, and the audience is on its feet, screaming, yelling, stomping, whistling, and cheering like they were at a rock and roll concert. And that happens on a regular basis. So You know, I would encourage any of you that haven't come, even if you don't think you like classical music, just come once and try a classical concert. I promise you, you won't go away disappointed. You're more likely to go away saying to yourself, wow, why did I think I didn't like classical music? Because it's an extraordinary experience in that hall. You know, that's what it was designed for. You can hear the quietest pianissimo. You can hear the string players touch the string with the bow. Yet, when the orchestra has to play full force, like in a Mahler symphony, it'll blow your hair back, and so give you goosebumps. So it's really quite exciting. And I think you know, as we go forward, you'll find that the quality of the product, the quality of the orchestra has been our first consideration, our most important consideration, and we intend to maintain our commitment to the community and to our mission. And even as we make these changes, you know, and I would say to you that as we go forward, you'll also start to hear more from us, you know, out there in terms of the press and in terms of our message to our constituents that help people really understand how we are moving forward. But we have made tremendous changes. We are up to the task, and we are committed to a bright future. And I'll tell you that that's not just the staff and the management team, but also the board and the orchestra. So anyway, I think maybe what I'll do now is open it up for questions, because I'm sure there are a few. Okay, where do we start? Let's start here.
Okay. I have a statement, I guess, and a question. My statement is I'm a professionally trained musician, so I love classical music and all of that. I'm a classical music trained musician. And I sense there's a branding issue here. And I'm curious of why the symphony hasn't at least addressed the educational side in a different way. That is, in terms of being like a Blair School of Music. You have all the musicians there. You have this facility. You have the talent. Because music is a dying art in our schools. And I know you're doing all the pro bono stuff and you're helping along them. That's my statement. The question is, what do you think has been your greatest mistake in opening the symphony?
The greatest mistake in opening the Symphony Hall? Well, you know, we've asked ourselves that question a number of times. I think the greatest mistake, you know, if we had it to do over again, would we do things kind of the way we did it? The answer is probably yes. You know, at the time, everybody thought it was a good idea. You know, we thought it was a good idea. The banks thought it was a good idea. I mean, everybody looked at the model and said it's going to work. But we were living in a very different time, as you all know. The difference is, knowing what I know now, is I would have said we need to raise at least 50% more money than we did. That would have solved the problem.
But you couldn't anticipate the economy.
Exactly.
Of the flood, so that's.
But, you know, some people might say, well, you should have anticipated the economy, you know. But I agree with you. But you know, it's one of those interesting questions. You know, we all know the economy goes in cycles. I just don't think any of us expected a down cycle to be that severe that soon after we opened.
How much tourism does the Skirmerhorn promote?
Well, believe it or not, we've done that analysis, and it's been a couple of years now since we did it, but we found that 20%, and that number's growing because we're adding events.
So someone who is not a fan of, or hasn't been a fan previously of classical music, if you had to choose one concert, one of the classical series concerts to go to expose someone to,
what would it be? Anything by Gustav Mahler. If you've never been, go hear Mahler. Back in the corner.
Well, you said that your operating budget hasn't changed in 7 years, and I was hoping you could go to Washington and teach our federal government that too.
Well, I have my hands full. But actually, it's when I say it hasn't gone up. It's actually gone down. I mean, going into next year, the expense side of the budget will be over $3 million smaller than this current year's expense budget. And that's on the heels of additional cuts. So if you strip away, it's hard. I think one of the problems is you heard a lot about our tax returns. Those are very complex documents, and basically they're publicly available. The media got a hold of those and tried to understand what we call them. And we, for most concerts, have tickets available to the general public at a reduced price. Now they're a limited number, and you have to kind of get there early. We also do a program with the colleges and universities around town called Sound Check. And we give out a card, and the students then register online for the Sound Check program. And when we have concerts that are not selling out, we email the Sound Check participants, and they're allowed to then buy tickets. I think the price of those is $15, but they might get an $85 seat in a good section for $15. So it's the college kids, and they're taking advantage of it. They're coming and bringing dates, and so that's really worked very well.
Last question. What was your net unrecovered loss as a result of the stock market decline in 2008 and the flood?
Well, the net effect on the investment pool was about $35 million. So that's the loss from the flood, the unrecovered loss from the flood, including the missed recovery. And it didn't happen all in 1 year. That's the other problem with looking at the tax returns, is there's a lot of stuff that, like the flood loss got recorded in 1 year, and some of the recoveries got recorded, some more recoveries got recorded in the next year, and even to this day, we're still waiting for the last nearly $5 million of FEMA proceeds. So there's a lot of nuance in all of that. But there's no question we have a serious operating challenge, and we need the community's help to solve it. We're doing the hard stuff we need to do, but we also need the help of the community.
Alan, thank you so much. I see some other questions, so if you wouldn't mind hanging around afterwards and speak to a few of our Kiwanians.